¿Desea usted un país de calidad? Entregue calidad, exija calidad.
Televisión argentina de calidad. Clase Ejecutiva. El programa televisivo argentino con certificación de calidad ISO 9001-2008.
Una producción Nova Patagonia.
Buenas noches, bienvenidos a Clase Ejecutiva. Qué interesante el tema de las campañas políticas, cómo se diseñan, cómo se construyen. Los hombres en general juzgan más por los ojos que por las manos, ya que a todos es dado ver, pero palpar a pocos. Cada uno ve lo que pareces, pero pocos palpan lo que eres, y a estos pocos no se atreven a enfrentarse a la opinión de muchos, que tienen además la autoridad del Estado para defenderlos. Palabras de Nicolás Maquiavelo hace casi 700 años. Vamos a analizar hoy los elementos básicos de una estrategia para una campaña electoral, y lo vamos a hacer con un, créanme, excelente especialista, después de los títulos de Clase Ejecutiva. Claves para campañas políticas se titula nuestra emisión de hoy. Y tenemos como invitado a un especialista justamente muy reconocido en estrategias de campañas políticas, el doctor Michael Hanahan. Mike, thank you for coming. It's a pleasure to have you here.
It's an honor to be here.
Let me introduce you to the audience. Graduado en la Miami University en Oxford, Ohio, con un máster en Administración Pública en la University of Massachusetts, el profesor Hanahan obtuvo su doctorado en Ciencias Políticas también en dicha Universidad de Massachusetts. Ha participado en numerosas campañas políticas en Estados Unidos como consultor asesor en la planificación estratégica de dichas campañas, y es también profesor en el Departamento de Ciencias Políticas en la Universidad de Massachusetts, donde ha diseñado e imparte cursos de organización, financiamiento de campañas políticas, la presidencia, teoría de la política norteamericana, gobiernos locales, financiamiento de campañas, ciudadanía y democracia, y es también fundador y director de la iniciativa cívica de la Universidad de Massachusetts. Well, it's an impressive CV. I had to brief it, but I mean, if you had to list the key basic elements of for building a political campaign, how such a list would be like?
Well, the first is desire. If you're a candidate, you have to want to win. And the second is know the rules. If you run in Argentina, you need to know the party list, the person that makes the list. If you run in the U.S., you set up your own system. If it's president, it's a different game, I think. President is, everyone knows who's running for president. It becomes a more technical exercise.
And what goes first? The candidate or fundraising?
I think it's always the candidate. I think there's a myth out there that money buys victory. I mean, money helps.
Of course.
You know, I'd rather have a rich, bad candidate than a really poor, mediocre candidate. But give me a good candidate, and the money will come. I think the people really do, especially for president, again, because everyone knows who the president is, it's the candidate, ultimately.
And when you talk about parliamentary elections, it's very different?
Very different. In the U.S., a congressman is an independent business. They decide to run. They raise their money. And for them, the most important thing is to become known. Because who would vote for someone they never heard of? But in a parliamentary system or a list system, the most important thing is getting on the list and then hoping you have a good party.
In a strategic positioning terms, could you treat a candidate as a product?
I don't think so. I mean, there are techniques that one can use. What does a television commercial look like? What's the message? How consistent are you going to communicate the message? That, yes, do have a relationship to a marketing campaign. But people don't vote for soap. You know, they buy soap. but they vote for a candidate because they have beliefs that they had before the campaign even started. And they're looking for the person that expresses those beliefs. So I think there's a big difference between a political campaign and a product campaign.
And do you consider digital tools and social networks as a must today, nowadays, campaigns?
Well,
they are so important?
It's something that you have to do, yes, because everyone does. And so when your opponent has a cannon, you have to buy a cannon.
Yeah.
If your opponent has a ship, you need a ship.
You have to, yeah.
But you could still run a campaign, without that. What they really do, at least in the U.S., and I think this could happen in Argentina as well, is it lowers the cost of entry.
Yeah.
Because advertising becomes cheaper in its own way, and raising money becomes cheaper in its own way. So the barrier lowers, and I think that can erode the party system some.
Talking about money and talking about
I love
fundraising.
Talking about money.
Yeah, I know, because fundraising, it's
right.
crucial for a political campaign. What are the best ways to do such a activity of fundraising, preserving the independence of this future president or whatever?
Well, again, my comments... The comments are limited to the U.S., because the Argentinian system is so different with the way the parties work, and the laws are different. The best way to raise money is to look like you're going to win.
Yeah, of course.
People want to give money to the winner. That's why incumbents get the most money in the Congress.
But what about the starting point?
Well, the thing about president, though, is the Republican, whoever the candidate is, and whoever the Democrat is, they're going to raise a lot of money, because it's a very powerful position. I think to start raising money, what you need to do is have a very strong ideological point of view that attracts a small group of strong believers, because they're the most likely to give money, And then after that, you need to broaden your appeal. So with the internet, the ideological candidate that appeals to a very strong group, they can raise a lot of money, but then they have to broaden their appeal to go up to the next level. They have to show people they can win. So a strong ideological base, but then I can win.
Well, you are really a specialist in targeting techniques and using data during the political campaigns. And the question is the following. Do the politicians, the candidates, tell the people their own ideas, their own proposals, or rather they tell people what people wish to be told? And which is how to do a trade-off there, a balance?
Well, I didn't answer one of your questions before. I want to go back to that, and that is, how does a candidate raise money and also maintain their independence? That's a good question. I think I would answer it, though, in a slightly different way. It is any candidate that runs has a coalition of people that elect them, right? So President Kirchner had a coalition of people that elected her. President Obama had a coalition, a group of people that elected them. And they owe that coalition something. It's not just the people that raise money. It's in the Democratic Party, it's African Americans, it's many Hispanic Americans, it's liberals, etc. So you always owe you never have complete freedom. You always owe your coalition something. So I just wanted to mention that.
There are no absolute worlds anyway.
Right. You're never completely independent. You've made commitments in your campaign, etc. I don't think money at the presidential level narrows the range of options for the president as much as other people think. That's just my opinion. For Congress, maybe. The president deals with bigger issues.
What about the speech, the candidates' communication? Do they tell people what they really think, or they tell people what data indicates?
Well, I think a great leader, Lincoln was a classic, but great leaders have to be able to be able to lead and follow.
You're talking about somebody,
one of your
words.
favorites?
Yeah.
Well, you have to be able to lead and follow at the same time.
Yeah.
You can only get so far ahead of your people in a democracy. So you look at, say, a major problem in Argentina, or a major problem in the U.S., and you know the solution is not something that's going to be popular with your people. How do you do that? And you have to lead them along in small steps, and that's very hard.
But when you use your techniques to measure the opinions and the feelings of the audience, the voters, I think that you are going to indicate from that data, you are going to indicate some ways, some highlights.
Yeah, but in the U.S., when you look at a poll, and again, this is different in Argentina, if you look at a survey in the U.S., what you're really looking for is not so much what do people want to hear, as much as how can I give my message to the appropriate coalition of people. There's certain people that are not going to vote for you. And then there's certain people that are going to vote for you. And there's certain people in the middle. And everyone shares a concern for the same issues. But how do you say it? What's the narrative story that you're going to give? Those are what we look for in constructing a campaign commercial. What's the story you want to tell?
Let's go to a commercial break and we'll come back to Clase Ejecutiva.
Agrofarma, el laboratorio transnacional de origen argentino, líder en salud, performance y productividad animal.
Podés seguir pidiendo deseos o empezar a cumplirlos. Con Quiniela Plus podés ganar más de 350.000 pesos por solo 2 pesos.
La industria alimentaria argentina tiene un proveedor líder, el bahiense. Materias primas, aditivos y químicos para la industria alimentaria. www.elbahiense.com.
Manténgase informado en Clase Ejecutiva Online. www.claseejecutiva.tv. Alimento para pensar.
Estamos viendo claves para campañas políticas, para estrategias políticas, y lo estamos haciendo con un invitado muy interesante que es el doctor profesor Michael Hanahan. Mike, could any strategy have the power to transform a good vote getter into a great statesman?
I tend to think that most success after the election has to do with the skills and the personality of the candidate and the situation that they find themselves in. I'm not a believer that how you run your campaign is going to have an enormous difference on governing afterwards. You would get different opinions on that. If you run your campaign in a very divisive manner, you try to break people apart, you may have a harder time leading afterwards. But I think in the U.S., once someone is elected president, they follow the president.
Yeah, of course.
Or they oppose the president. But it's not because the campaign's over. I don't think campaigns make great statesmen. I think circumstances do.
Nowadays, in your opinion, do people, voters, the market, do they really mind about the content of a candidate?
Well, it's not... Most people come to the world, or at least adults, we come to the world we already have ideas. And we already have thoughts about how the world should be. And we already have definitions of what we think the problems are. You know, Argentines might think there's not enough subsidies, there's too many subsidies. People in the U.S., taxes are too low, they're too high. You already have those ideas. So candidates don't just tell people things that they believe. They play into pre-existing notions that societies have. And it's more trying to find the people that are on the margin of what story they don't know yet. So in the U.S., for example, is the problem in the U.S. the government is too big and takes too much in taxes and does too much in regulation? Or is the problem that Wall Street and the finance industry and the wealthy are taking money from your average middle-class person and people don't have a fair chance? Those are very different stories. Mm-hmm. And a lot of Americans believe one or the other, and some believe both. So what candidate is going to capture the right story that people already believe and put it together in an appealing package?
What are the main suggestions you would give to somebody foreseeing to get into the competitive politics?
Well, the first one I say you'll have to laugh at because people are very cynical about politics, and maybe they should be. All adults should be a little cynical. But I think a lot of politicians, at least the ones that I know and have worked with, really do want to make a difference. And they really do believe in what they fight for. So I think the first thing you need to be a successful politician is a desire to make a difference. I know that sounds very sort of high school-like, but I mean, most good politicians really do want to make a difference. That's the first thing. You have to know why you're running. If I ask you the question, why are you running, and you cannot answer, you're not going to win. And the second is the realization it's going to be very hard. It's very difficult to be rejected. Politicians get rejected. People vote against them. They have to talk in public all the time. They get criticized constantly. You have to have a very, I don't know how you say in Spanish, but a very thick skin, we would say in English. And then I think you do need to have a certain tolerance for compromise. Once you're elected, you're going to be forced to work with a lot of people you don't like. And you have to accept losing. And you have to accept winning half. And those would be the three things I would say: a desire, a knowledge of why you're running, and a thick skin. And, accept losing sometimes.
Where to start for somebody who's starting?
A young person starting?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of rich people get into politics, and they still want to start at the top.
They want to get fun?
They want to be God, and that position's already taken. If I was a young person, I would look at the rules in your country. What are the rules for progress? And I would figure the rules out, and I would start low and work hard. If you're in Argentina, you want to volunteer for the party. You want to understand how the list is made up. What do they need? Is it fundraising? Is it volunteer work? What kind of things do they need? It may take years. In the U.S., you might be running for a small office, learning the skill, learning the trade, and then working your way up from there. But it takes time.
It takes time, of course.
Look at Hillary Clinton, Secretary of State. She was married to Governor Bill Clinton, a very small state of Arkansas. She wasn't originally from Arkansas, and she spent years as a first lady, 8 years. She ran for the Senate. She was Senate for a long time. Then she ran for president. She lost. Now she's Secretary of State. Mitt Romney has run for office so many times I can't, even comment. So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of time. And people that want instant results are not going to be successful in politics. Right. Usually. Sometimes a celebrity will...
Yeah, because they have a market share.
Yeah, or something unusual happens in the world and they're looking for a new face.
Mike, do you find many difference between building a political campaign in the U.S. and building it in Argentina? Are they so different?
Well, I think at the presidential level, I see a lot of similarities in the way the campaigns are run. The political parties are very different. I don't understand Argentine political parties, and many Argentines don't either that I talk to. U.S. political parties are at least simple. We've always had a Democrat and a Republican, and people understand what they mean. But the way your president runs a campaign, very similar to what I would see in the U.S. Ronald Reagan's campaign in 1984, It's Morning in America, was very similar in my mind to Kirchner's campaign, the strength of, and then the strength of different groups. When an incumbent is being successful, they don't want to say a lot about issues. They just want to say how good things are and make people feel good about themselves. And even the pictures of President Kirchner look like the pictures of President Reagan, little fuzzy masses of people. There's a lot of similarities.
Which other similarities did you find between both campaigns?
I think the number one similarity is people vote. I think Perón said this. I think Perón said the most important organ is the wallet. I don't know if that's an exact translation. But the Argentine economy is doing fairly well, and the U.S. economy is not. Under Reagan, it was.
Yeah.
And so the incumbent candidate, wants to just talk about fuzzy things. We're all happy. We're still strong. Look at how we're doing. And this campaign, the Kirchner, very skillful in the way it included different groups, and it was a unifying theme, but not a lot on issues. And the same thing was true with the Reagan campaign in '84. The colors of the TV ads, the types of TV ads, the message that did not have a lot of content, but still captured a feeling that people were, they were feeling good about themselves. Now, Obama can't run that kind of campaign because the economy is not good. So he's got to fight, and he's got to have some content. And the Republicans are going to attack him every day, in every way. And so those are the similarities I would see between those.
Let me command for a commercial break, the last one, y volvemos enseguida con más Clase Ejecutiva.
En Argentina todavía queda gente buena. Electropelva, un equipo de 100 personas a su servicio. Materiales eléctricos e iluminación para hogares, industrias, construcción, comercios e infraestructura. www.electropelva.com.
Altman Construcciones. Oficinas sustentables y viviendas edificadas con los mejores materiales y la mejor tecnología. Estética, funcionalidad, versatilidad y confort, con garantía y servicio postventa. Oficinas sustentables y viviendas Altman. Disfrútalas hoy, manteniendo su valor para siempre. www.altman.com.ar.
Televisión argentina de calidad. Clase Ejecutiva. El programa televisivo argentino con certificación de calidad ISO 9001-2008.
Estamos viendo estrategias para campañas políticas, elementos básicos, claves para las campañas políticas. Lo estamos haciendo con el doctor Michael Hanahan. Mike, we have talked a little bit during this interview about money and fundraising, and there is a dimension of materiality that we cannot deny. We need money and funds to do things. But how to deal with money in democracy? How is that relationship between money within democracy?
Well, that's a big question. At the theoretical level, you have to make a few, I think, admissions, and that is money is always powerful. And almost nothing that we do is going to make money less powerful. The question is, how do we keep it honest, and how do we keep it transparent? If people know where money is coming from, that's data they can use in a vote. So there's questions of keeping money honest, and there's questions of keeping it transparent. And every country deals with it in its own way. One major answer to the question is public funding. So the taxpayers pay for that. In the U.S., that's a very unpopular idea. There are people that like it. I personally like the idea. But a lot of people don't want to put their tax money into political campaigns. The other problem in the U.S. is the Constitution, the First Amendment, has been interpreted to mean that the government cannot really control political speech. And I know you have some rules in Argentina about when you have to stop campaigning and when television ads cannot be run. Those are illegal in the U.S. It's very difficult for the government to come up with any rules regarding spending money on political campaigns.
It would be against freedom of speech?
Yes. The Supreme Court has consistently decided over the last 30 or 40 years that money is speech. That if you're a company or a labor union or a rich person, you're spending money on a TV ad is a right. I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's how our system has gotten, to where it is. So what we've opted for is transparency. Donations are recorded; they're online. You can see them. Expenditures are recorded; they're online, and you can see them. But I think we're at a crisis point in the U.S. I do believe that people feel, and feelings are just as real as empirical data, that the system is dishonest. And I think the government really needs to find some ways to at least approach the regulation of political money so people don't feel as if it's not fair. It's a perception question. On the other hand, you do need money to run a political campaign.
Of course.
There's 330 million people in the U.S. If you sent them one piece of mail, it would be about $330 million. Just one piece of mail. And you can't just give free television time, because there's not that much. Then it gets eaten up. There's a lot of difficult questions that are genuine questions in there. But the perception of unfairness in the U.S. has really gone very high, and it's shared by both parties.
Let me give you some presents from our sponsors talking about money. Por favor, señor director, señora directora.
Eurotime Outdoor Watches. Relojes deportivos con funciones adicionales para todos los deportes extremos.
Agrofarma, el main sponsor de Clase Ejecutiva.
We are in a rush. We have 1 minute. It is more important, emotion or reason in politics, in a political campaign?
I think emotions are always more important, and that's why reason is so important in laws, to try to make sure those emotions take place in a structure that doesn't let them run free.
Great answer. Mike, thank you very much for coming. I hope you have enjoyed this show.
I've enjoyed it very much. I'm always amazed that somebody might find it interesting, what I have to say.
Thank you very much, and I think that you are going to be back in Argentina in the future?
I'll be here until the 23rd of December, and I hope to come back next year as well. I've been here, this is my 4th time, so.
Thank you very much. Señoras y señores, nosotros nos escuchamos mañana viernes a las 17 horas en FM 94.7 en Clase Ejecutiva Radio. Y nos volveremos a encontrar, si Dios quiere, el jueves próximo a las 22:30 para darnos alimento para pensar en dónde, sino aquí, en Clase Ejecutiva.